a couple leadership lessons that I've been thinking about from my dad, who passed away just over 16 years ago. I just got back on Monday from Hawaii. While on this trip, it was really special. I was able to have a lot of moments just with my brothers and I, which we don't usually have, that are not cut short by meetings, by kids needing something or interrupting or other calls or, yeah, I got to hop. Usually they're just quick phone calls. But here we are just sitting on the lanai of our room or by the ocean with kind of this endless time just to talk and make jokes. So on one of these moments, the three of us were sitting on lounge chairs, and I think we were talking about how much my brother Josh is like my dad, like his mannerisms, even the way his hands look and the expressions he makes on his face. And we were just saying, wow, it is so much like dad. It's crazy. And my dad's name was Norm, by the way. And we were kind of laughing about that and talking about it and saying how interesting it is. And then I don't know how it got brought up, but my brother, Matt, he was like, do you know how much time a year dad would spend over in Asia? And I've been thinking about that so much, just as a leader, as someone who's building my own business, as someone who was in the corporate world. I just wish I could pick so much of his brain of what it was like to be in a business like that. And my brother Josh was like, I went to China shortly after dad passed, and I met with companies who worked with him. And I got to hear a little bit about what it was like to work with dad, and they shared some funny things and shared some really interesting things. So we were talking about that, and that just really stuck with me. And I was like, and I'll share what that is in just a little bit. But I was like, oh, wow, that's really powerful. I'm like, man, with everything my dad achieved and the business that was built with his partnership and, the legacy that I saw that he left, I'm like, I know was a really strong leader, and I could perceive some of those things, but I'm like, I've never really truly reflected on it, or I guess really dug into define as to why. So after this conversation, I was like, oh, there's something in this. And it had me thinking for the rest of my time in Hawaii and lingering with me today of like, what are a few of those biggest lessons that I can share coming from somebody so formidable in my life, and hoping maybe it might also spur you to think about the people that are around you that you look up to, that maybe not be in a typical leadership position, like a manager or boss or someone that you would maybe label as they're my leader, but they are in their own right to you or to others or in their lives or in their work. And what can you learn from them and reflect on? The first one, I'm going to share three, is building off the story I started to tell. And it's around legacy, how to build a legacy that you are proud of. So when Josh was talking about going to China after my dad passed and meeting with his companies, what he shared is he said, you know what? One thing that they all said is that the way that dad would talk about working, like going over there and working with these people, with all the different employees and partners at these company, was, we are all in this together. We are going to figure this out together. We are going to build this together. So he created a joint team between two disparate, different companies. He always honored that. And that was like his tried and true go back to, like, we are partners. We are going to work this out. We're going to figure this out together. And I have to imagine, between the culture differences, between the language barriers, between doing things for the first time, how incredibly difficult that was, how much patience it required, which my dad had a lot of, how much curiosity that would take to truly try to understand the people in front of you and how to find mutual success, and do so from a place of respect and kindness and integrity. When Josh shared that this is what the companies had said, we reflected on the fact that right after he passed, we were gifted from his company this album. It's like a massive brown album that was not filled with pictures. It was filled with cards. And it was cards of all the different partners and people from these companies just writing to say, oh my gosh, we're so sorry. We loved your dad. We loved Norm. And like sharing like memories and just like kind words. And it was like, they didn't have to do that, And so knowing and seeing that, the amount of just respect and admiration and grief coming from these partners is evident of his legacy. And Josh said when he was over there, like, they loved, meeting Josh and talking about him. And it also that, they shared this story that my dad had told us too that I will never forget. And it was that one time my dad didn't like a lot of attention, but and a lot of like pomp or circumstance or anything. But when he was over there, one time he went to one of the factories that they worked with a lot. And when he arrived and his car was pulling up, every single worker of the factory was lined up along this driveway to greet him, just to greet my dad, waving and cheering. And I think there might have been fireworks. Maybe I'm making that up, but I swear to God there was. They were just so thankful for his business, so for his partnership, for to him, that the whole company wanted to honor him as he arrived. So, and that same company wrote wonderful things after he passed. And I share all of this to say that we had us over here, his family, probably most of the people he worked with at the company didn't know what he was doing over there beyond the output and the product and like the mission of it, but didn't know probably how he conducted himself day by day or how his principles showed up. And I think it's evident that they did. And that it is in these moments and it's in consistency that we build our legacies. And it's consistencies in how we show up in those principles and more importantly in our values over and over and over again with whoever it is that we are working with or speaking to or connecting with or partnering with. And we are so often just so in the moment to try to get what we're looking to achieve or to get through. And I urge us all to spend more time as to what is it for and what do we want our legacy to be? And how do we show up in the moments when people are watching, when they're not, with the people who are the ones giving us promotions and the ones who are not? How are we continuing to show up in those same principles by honoring those same values to us and creating a legacy that we are proud of, that our families are proud of, that continue to be spoken about years, decades later, of the type of person that we are? It makes me a little emotional because it's powerful to think about, and I'm grateful to have that legacy to look back on. The second one also I think builds off of this story, but this idea of taking the work seriously but not yourself. And one of the stories my brother also shared of my dad in Asia, that these companies, they said, would order all the weirdest foods, right? And just like have my dad eat them because he always would. And I think to them, they found it entertaining and funny. And I remember being on the other side of the table, another side of the country, my dad coming home and telling us these stories of fish eyes and just like crazy things that we, of course, in America did not eat ever regularly. And he would come back and he was quite brave, but also out of respect and connection to them and their culture, he would do it. And he would often come home very sick and worn down, maybe not just from the food, but just from the weary travel and how much work he had to do. But I think that too is a sign of just like they were having fun with him. And I never realized like the kind of the humor that would maybe build in these relationships, but I saw it on the other side of things. And my dad worked so hard. He's the hardest worker I think I've ever known. And he took the work very seriously. He took the company very seriously, and he was extremely, extremely dedicated. However, he also liked to have a really good time, and he was like the king of practical jokes. So at home, my mom would walk past the front of the car and he'd give a little honk and make her jump, or we'd be walking in front of him at a revolving door and he'd make it stop so we couldn't move anymore. Like these little practical jokes that happened over and over again that we always fell for, that would be amusing to him. And he would always like to create a moment of levity and joy, even if no one laughed but himself. And we began to see how this would come to life at work too. These days especially, there's a lot to be stressed about. My dad was incredibly stressed all the time from work. And I it's no different now. I know all of you are feeling that in different ways, whether from the state of the world, whether it's something going on personally, professionally. There's a lot to take seriously. There's a lot to be stressed about. But we cannot let that keeping us from seeking and savoring moments of little quiet moments of joy, or not even quietly loud moments of joy within our day. They are not getting in the way of our ability to do great work, to solve big problems, to care about things deeply. It's actually helping us create the capacity to be able to do so, to have moments of joy and connection and humor and, love. So I just encourage you that, yes, take the work seriously, but you don't have to take yourself seriously, and lean into those moments. And it's okay to find joy and happiness and then get back to all the seriousness. The last leadership lesson I learned from my dad. And I think this is one that's really important for all of us, or just, I think some folks are a lot better at this now than others, but seeing it firsthand, it's one that's worth talking about. And it's, don't work yourself away to build a life that you never get to enjoy. And I think sometimes we get caught so much in the success and the outcome that we're working towards that we forget why we're doing it. And I do believe that in generations now and younger are way better at this. And I applaud that. But I saw myself going into this trap and was able, or hoping and still trying to pull myself out of it. And so I think it's worth a reminder. So I watched my dad work his ass off. I mean, he worked so hard to help build this company from something quite small to something quite big. And he was really, really dedicated. And as I said, he was really stressed. And I saw that came at the expense of his health. He had debilitating migraines. He had to use that oxygen tank for. I never saw him really take care of his body or his health or nutrition. His personal peace was often disrupted, and he'd work long days. And he was really present for a lot within our childhood of events and sports. But there was a lot that I know and have come to learn when I was quite young that he wasn't. And like I said, he would travel for up to a couple months a year, and along with other business travel. So there was long stretches of time that he wasn't around. And ultimately it was through, those years of sacrifice that caught up with him. And he worked so hard to want to build a life that he was proud of, that was of giving a future and, retirement for him and his mom, just to relax and enjoy themselves and to travel and to create a lot of opportunity and for us kids. And we got to see that as we got older. He stepped back little by little, and we would take these wonderful family vacations. My dad and my mom began to travel. But it was just a slice of really what I know he was working towards. And it didn't make up for the sacrifice, I believe. Work hard. Yes. Work in your purpose, but don't work so hard that for something that one day you won't be able to be around to enjoy. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen to this. To recap my 3 leadership lessons from Norm Yellen. First of all, building a legacy through consistency in your values, through showing up with respect and integrity, and being consistent with everyone that you work and speak with, and be mindful of what you're doing everything for. What do you want your legacy to be? The second, don't take work seriously, but not yourself. Give yourself those moments to enjoy the small bits of levity or joy or connection, because that's what allows us to keep moving on and help balance out all the stress and seriousness that permeates us constantly right now. And yeah, work hard, work in your purpose, do work that feels meaningful to you, build the life you want to build, but don't do so at the sacrifice of, working so hard that you towards something you're not going to be able to enjoy later in your life.